All right, and welcome back. This is Realize Yourself, and I am Mark. So, in today's episode, we're going to go over a really fascinating allegory, metaphor, whatever you want to call it, called Plato's Cave. And this is absolutely fascinating. It's called Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And this directly relates to self-realization and is actually a key, a hidden key that you'll see towards the end. So, in the book, I talk about Plato's Cave. I say we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss Plato's Cave, which may very well serve as a profound metaphor for self-realization. Across countless Upanishads, there is a mention of the cave of the heart, the secret chamber where Brahman, or the self, resides. Around 380 BCE, the Greek philosopher Plato wrote the Republic, and in its 7th book he presents the famous allegory of the cave. In this story, prisoners are chained to a wall inside a cave, facing away from the opening. Behind them burns a fire, casting shadows on the wall before them. These shadows are all the prisoners have ever seen, so they take them as reality. One day, a prisoner breaks free and emerges into the light outside. At first, the brightness overwhelms him, and his eyes struggle to adjust. But eventually, he perceives the rich fullness of reality. Excited, he rushes back to tell his fellow prisoners, and only to be met with disbelief. They think he has gone mad and that the sunlight has harmed him. They conclude that leaving the cave is dangerous. Socrates, the narrator, even suggests that the prisoners would kill anyone attempting to escape. The shadows the prisoners see are analogous to the world we perceive through our 5 senses, the filtered, incomplete reality of the egoic self. Just as the prisoners mistake shadows for the entirety of existence, most people mistake their thoughts, emotions, and bodies for the self. The divine spark, the fire hidden within, remains unseen unless we remove the chains, detachments, illusions, and subconscious programs that bind us. This allegory also reveals a harsh truth. The masses will defend their illusions fiercely. People cling to their delusions of the egoic self, much like the prisoners of Plato's cave, because confronting the truth threatens the very foundation of their reality. Modern society reinforces these chains, conditioning us to accept that the shadows are real, to remain trapped in a limited, comatose state of misidentification. Breaking free requires courage and defiance, walking against societal norms, questioning inherited beliefs, and daring to leave that cave. Only then can one discover the self. Plato's story is brilliantly layered, hiding the wisdom of self-realization directly in plain sight. Plato himself studied in the mystery schools of Egypt and may have had connections to India's spiritual traditions such as Taxila, or at least interacted with travelers from the East. I believe they called them gymnosophists, these naked, wandering Indian yogi type of people. This cross-cultural exposure would explain the parallels between his allegory and the Upanishadic teachings on the self. Historically, knowledge of the self was carefully guarded. Self-realization was rarely taught to the masses, perhaps for good reason. Those who sought to spread this knowledge openly were often met with persecution. The Cathars, for instance, were brutally killed by the Catholic Church during the Crusades and the Inquisition for teaching gnosis. The direct knowledge of the self, Plato's cave, reminds us why the path to self-realization has always required courage, discernment, and the willingness to step beyond the illusions of society. And it wasn't just the Cathars, it was many different people throughout history. I mean, Jesus is a prime example, which may have been part of a metaphor, an allegory to represent actually this very key idea. There's Al-Hallaj, was it Al-Hallaj? It was one of the Sufis. He was actually killed too for sharing this secret type of information to the masses. And what's very fascinating too is the Upanishads have direct references to a cave which they called the Guha, which the cave was right here. The cave of the chest area and the cave of the heart is where the self resides. So For example, in the Svetasvatara Upanishad 3:11 and 3:20, 3:11 it says, "He who is in the faces, heads, and necks of all, who dwells in the cave of the heart of all beings, who is all pervading, he is Lord, and therefore the omnipresent, the self." 3:20, "Subtler than the subtle, greater than the great is the self that is set in the cave of the heart of the creature. One beholds him as being actionless and becomes free from sorrow. Even through the grace of the Creator, he sees the Lord and his majesty." The Mundaka Upanishad 2:110 and 3:1-7. "The person himself is all this, austerity and Brahma beyond death. He who knows that which is set in the secret place of the heart, he here on earth, O beloved, cuts asunder the knots of ignorance." 3:1-7. "Vast divine of the unthinkable form, subtler than the subtle, it shines forth farther than the far, yet here near the hand, set down in the secret place of the heart. As such, even here it is seen by the intelligent." Katha Upanishad 1.2, verse 12 and 1:3:1. "Realizing through self-contemplation that primal God, difficult to be seen, deeply hidden, set in the cave of the heart, dwelling in the deep, the wise man leaves behind both joy and sorrow. There are two selves that drink the fruit of karma in the world of good deeds. Both are lodged in the secret place of the heart, the chief seat of the Supreme. That's the self. The key is here." And even in modern day shows and media, social media, but there's a Netflix show called Stranger Things, and there's a cave which the evil person called Vecna is afraid to enter. And that evil Vecna seems to represent the demiurge, or the evil god of this world that the Gnostics talk about. We'll go over Gnosticism at a later time, but it's a fascinating show that may actually represent that Vecna, that evil demiurge, is afraid to enter the cave. And it could be that, and most likely is, that is the secret safe place from this world, from everything, and that's the self, where the self resides. And they call the cave the Guha in Sanskrit. Many different Upanishads talk about this. And so, yeah, that's it. Thank you for being here, and I think that's it for the cave. A really fascinating story. It goes to show you too that, one last thing. Socrates mentioned that people will kill for their beliefs, and so this is why this information has to be kept secret. You can see that this information, even with some of the comments, just triggers people, and some of their programmed beliefs are come into question, and they act out, or they get angry, they get mad, and they attack whoever questions their beliefs. And this is the same. You can see this in society with any deeply held belief, especially when it comes to religion or politics. And that's another thing. Stay out of the world. Stay out of the world as much as you can. Stay away from politics and all these fights with religion and politics and that sort of stuff. Just stay away from that. I mean, it's a never-ending battle. The world's going through its own karma, and stay out of that, and just realize the self. Focus on that. I know there's sometimes we can't stay out of the world, but we can as much as we can. And if we can't, just limit the interaction with the world as much as possible, because it'll pull you into that madness and that insanity away from the self. That's what the world's designed to do. The world is designed to pull you away from the self, and quite possibly for energetic purposes. And that's it. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful day.